This is an audio sample of Hung by the Tongue by Terry M. Bethel, from the Courageous Overcomers anthology. Growing up in a large family, I was number 3 of 6 kids. It was amazing. As children, we didn't have to wait for friends to come over, we always had company. We had an enormous yard with amenities and several dogs and cats on hand. I knew the yard well from an early age. It wasn't just because I spent many of my days climbing trees while foraging for the biggest, juiciest fruit or playing hide and seek or cowboys and Indians with my brothers. Nor was it because our parents lived their sporting dreams vicariously through us, causing us to excel in swimming, basketball, and tennis. No, it was because I regularly trekked the yard with Mummy as she walked me up and down, teaching me my times tables and spelling. I don't know how she did it as a working mother with 5 other children, but she made time for me. I was a skinny little girl with the long, straggly plaits and bundles of energy, and though while in public I was painfully shy, I loved to entertain my family. Having them laugh with me was always better than them laughing at me. Where do I fit in? I was surrounded by clever, confident, and talented siblings. For some reason, I didn't fit in any of those categories, and when the comparisons began, I froze. I was in the spotlight again, not for any outstanding achievement however, quite the contrary. I was in the spotlight because I was the dumb child, the sibling I had been told on many occasions would never do well in life. That was the beginning of my inner turmoil, locking myself away, hoping to move from the failure status to invisible. I wanted to disappear. Granted, I still loved my family, and everyone knew that one way to put a smile on my face was to play music. It was as though the music turned into a happiness gel-like substance that permeated every fiber of my being. Mad, sad, bad, or glad, it didn't matter how I was feeling. When that music kicked off, I was the queen of the poppy show. That's when the laughter began, and the family seemed to be knitted together until the next squabble. The disputes ranged from whose time it was to wash the dishes to who encouraged another to put a frog in the housekeeper's handbag to who helped to place the patio furniture and exercise mat in the 12-foot-deep swimming pool. In all cases, the disputes somehow found their way in front of Chief Justice, Sir Daddy. That didn't usually entail spanking. Mummy was the go-get-me-the-switch parent, and Daddy was the give-me 50 laps in the pool one. His discipline was usually multi-purpose. I felt like I experienced a brain freeze when it came to school. It got to the point where I didn't want to try to do better. I believed my family and didn't want to be in another altercation. If they said I was dumb, there was nothing I could do to change that, even though my teachers thought otherwise. As early as I could remember, my report cards read, "Terry could do better if she tried." In my little mind, I couldn't try. Trying to do better would mean I would make my family out to be liars if I did well. I wasn't daring enough to travel that route. Instead, I just prayed and asked God to make me vanish. I rushed through everything I did. If I was in a tennis tournament, fear gripped me so fiercely that I hit the balls in the net just to be done with the match. I couldn't bear all eyes being on me. My family couldn't figure out what the problem was. We played tennis almost daily with each other and Daddy's friends, and though I wasn't in the same league as our youngest brother, I was pretty good at it. My mother used those opportunities to socialize me. She would often tell me to look in the eyes of the person I was speaking to and address them by their names. She claimed not to do so was rude. I did when she was around but quickly slipped back into my shell, not wanting anyone to look through my eyes lest they see the depth of despair I was feeling. I learned how to camouflage my inadequacies as I grew by performing with false confidence. That meant on the outside, things looked great, but on the inside, I was still lost, fearful that I was one step closer to becoming the failure I was told I would be. Growing up with 3 brothers, I learned how to fight. It was fight or be tormented by the 2 oldest pranksters. Daddy insisted that the older girls join our brothers in self-defense classes, so I was no pushover, but no kicking or punching prepared me for the fight I encountered into adulthood. To boarding school we go. We were elated when the opportunity arose for the 4 older siblings to go to boarding school. I was 11, and we considered it another adventure, a new frontier for the overly energetic, mischievous bunch. Our destination? The girls went to a convent run by Irish nuns and the boys to a Catholic school run by Irish priests, both in North Wales, perhaps an hour from each other by train. The 9-hour non-stop flight from Nassau to London, followed by an hour's drive to the train station, a 5-hour or so train ride to Rhyl, and what seemed like an hour's ride to the boondocks of Denbigh in a Mini with a heavy-footed nun flying through the dark narrow road, felt like I was living in another time. Daytime at the convent was a beautiful sight to see. Behind us was spectacular green pasture lands sprinkled with gorgeous shade trees and dew-soaked sheep hidden beneath mounds of wool and, in the distance, snow-capped mountains. On the street side, a scary, foreboding wall wrapped its way around the entrance, shielding the imposing red brick building that housed the chapel, kitchen, dining hall, and upstairs sleeping quarters for most of the boarders and the nuns. For many, my sister and I were the first people of colour that the town had ever seen. Being followed into the bathroom in the early days by dorm mates on the 3rd floor wanting to see where my tail had been cut off was becoming stale. By the end of the first term, most had stopped asking about the tree house we lived in like Tarzan's. Thankfully, the photo album Mummy sent to help us through the inevitable homesick days proved we were humans. Despite the cultural adjustments, I made wonderful friends. Being a picky eater, most food like porridge, cold cereal, eggs, watercress, and cucumber sandwiches never made it to my lips. I ate crisps, potato chips, doused with ketchup and hot sauce whenever I had the opportunity, and though I was never a fan of bread, sliding a banana through a hot dog roll-shaped bun and flooding it with sugar was often my go-to breakfast. This eventually led to some weight gain and, of course, textured freckles, you know what I mean, pimples, the dreaded zits which my brothers were quick to say looked like guava seeds scattered across my face. Puberty was not fun for an already insecure child. The following year, the fear did not leave me. The new adjustments just compounded what I was going through. The condemning thoughts and insecurities, the challenge of trying to tame or comb my thick, wild hair that had long outgrown being straightened, and not having the best relationship with my sister who dished out insane punishments like writing a 1-page essay on what was on the inside of a ping-pong ball because I did not stand when she entered the room, as was the custom for seniors. The dorms were icy cold, despite the overworked radiator at the end of the room and the blanket-thick underwear that rose above my belly button. The dark wood corridors and squeaking floors leading to the single toilet on our side of the 2nd floor dorm seemed like miles away. I had to walk past the nuns' sleeping quarters, and the winding wooden staircase that looked like it should have been in a horror film to get to it. The setting was far from what I was accustomed to. The lone toilet at the end of the narrow passageway was shared with 3 dorms. There was a separate tub room with a single bathtub for what could have been more than 20 girls whose beds were lined off, separated by a single nightstand and a curtain for privacy, much like a hospital ward. Our personal closets, possibly the width of a 12-inch broom closet, were on the wall opposite the foot of my bed. It was cold, and we did not bathe daily as we did back home. Our bath times were scheduled 2 or 3 times weekly. In the interim, we washed from our bowls by our bedside, having towed a line to collect the water and relieve ourselves for the morning. We called our twice-daily routine the sign of the cross. That was washing the face, the southern private, and the 2 armpits before going to chapel and then to breakfast. Chapel was early morning before breakfast and after study hall in the evening and was as enjoyable as a tooth extraction. During this time, mustering the courage to ask the nuns questions seemed futile. You read and accepted, you didn't question or seek understanding, that was considered cheeky. I desperately wanted to connect with God but thought he had gone on strike or only spoke to the nuns in their holy black attire. As Anglicans or non-Catholics, we walked several miles to a nearby town every Sunday to get to church. Though surrounded by the most beautiful landscapes, it was seemingly void of people younger than Moses. The trek was made 2 by 2 in sunshine or snow. Apart from perhaps 2 others from the town and the ancient priest, the service housed less than a handful of us girls dressed in our smart green skirts, yellow-collared blouse with a necktie, and blazers trimmed with red and a hat, and on snowy days a long, hooded green cloak and sometimes Wellington boots. We were required to write home each week, and every now and then received wonderful care packages of native treats, as did many of the other students from their families. There were no cell phones back then, but we did get to speak to our parents for a few minutes every week, at least for the first year. My older sister had the dominant personality and had more lengthy conversations than I did. This has been an audio sample from Courageous Overcomers Anthology. For more information on how you can secure your copy of this book, email tbethel@booksbybethel.com or visit booksbybethel.com/courageous-overcomers.